Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. This morning's topic is something that's very near and dear to my heart, and it's all about professional development and how we think about ourselves, the work we do at JCCs, and our staff. So, what does it mean when your staff is disengaged? How important is it for them to be tuned into the work that you do at your JCCs every day? And what happens when they're not? How does being disengaged have anything to do with the work that they're doing and how productive they are in the work that you expect them to be doing? So today's keynote speaker is Dr. Debbie Gilboa. She is the author of Teach Resilience, Raising Kids Who Can Launch, and is an internationally respected speaker on parenting and youth development. She's founder of AskDrG.com, and she's popularly known as Dr. G on NBC's TV and radio on the Today Show. She's appeared in numerous and other local national television shows as well. Please join us today in welcoming Dr. G. Staff resilience means staff retention and success.
You guys are awake and at it. About 9 years ago, I walked in one morning to see a patient of mine whom I, at the time, already knew very well. I'd known her for a few years. She was a woman in her mid-50s, and she suffered from a rare type of MS called progressive MS. This is a type of multiple sclerosis where instead of having an exacerbation and then recovering almost to your baseline, however bad it gets in terms of function during that exacerbation is how it stays. So by the time I was seeing her, probably 7 years into her diagnosis, she was in a wheelchair, unable to reliably use anything below her clavicles. She toggled her wheelchair for mobility with something by her chin, and she had attendant health concerns, which were pretty significant. I walked in to see her, and I said, "Hi, Ms. So-and-so, how are you this morning?" And she said, "Wonderful." She said, "My grandbaby turned 1 this weekend, and we had a party. He's getting to be so big. And the roses by my front door are in bloom. And I'm going to that concert series, the first Friday at the Frick. I'm going Friday night, and I'm really looking forward to the artists that I'll get to hear." And we went on, and we had our visit. And I don't think I'd have noticed, but it was only about 3 patients later when I walked into a different room to see another woman, same race, about the same age, same socioeconomic level, same educational level. And according to her chart, and again, I've known her for a few years, she has some occasional low back pain, but is otherwise well. And I say, "Hey, Ms. So-and-so, how are you this morning?" And she says, "Terrible." And I say, "Tell me what's going on." And she said, "Well, it's just, with my back, nobody understands. My family, they don't help me, and they don't think about me when they're planning things, like, I can just go and do whatever they plan on doing, and my work doesn't accommodate me, and they don't think about my needs, and it's just really frustrating." And I said, "Is your pain much worse?" And she said, "Well, no, but it could be." And I went on and I helped her as best I might. But I couldn't help but think, how do I grow up behind door number 1? How do we raise our kids to grow up behind door number 1? How do we hire people who live behind door number 1? My son, my youngest son, has dyslexia. And if I told you that, we figured that out, and so we've decided to protect him from ever really having to read. All of the educators in the room just dropped their coffee and reached for the phone because they're mandated reporters. But if I told you that my youngest son is sensitive, and when hard things happen, he really takes it to heart, and they bruise him a lot. And like if the kid he likes doesn't sit next to him at the birthday party, he can't enjoy any more of the party. As a matter of fact, the whole day is kind of shot. He's just, he's sensitive. And so we manage that by just, trying to protect him and make sure that he's not in those situations where he has to deal with that kind of difficulty. You wouldn't be as shocked. But I contend that resilience is every bit as important as literacy. It is maybe more crucial. And yet, what are we doing to teach it? What are we doing to help each person move the bar a little bit on their own resilience? What are we doing about our own resilience? Resilience is the key factor in success. And the literature bears me out. If you read medical literature about patients' perception of their own quality of life, their diagnoses don't even play a role. It's about all that stuff we wrap around what we need to succeed. And the word we use for that is resilience, and that's what we have to break down and understand so that we can work on it. So that, just so the educators in the room can start breathing again, just like my child who has dyslexia and gets tutoring once a week and gets pushed and encouraged and strengthened so that he can become a fluent reader, even though he will always have dyslexia. You don't cure it. We need to understand what we need to wrap around ourselves and our organizations and our families so that we can improve and strengthen our resilience. You are all in charge of people. Some of you are in charge of a few people or one person. Some of you are in charge of more people than I can imagine being in charge of at one time. I'm in charge of my 4 people who live in my home, and I'm good with that. You're in charge of people. So if I gave you this magic wand, and you could sprinkle fairy dust over those people you're in charge of, what character traits would you give them? Not a rhetorical question. Honesty. Loyalty. Kindness. Hardworking. Self-reflection, and I'm going to guess insight as well. Energy, reliability, integrity, flexibility. You won't be surprised to know that a lot of people have asked this question, and top 6 answers on the board. So, people talk about adaptability and self-control. You see organizational awareness, which is not something most of your employees have ever learned in school. We know that we need clear communication and initiative and resilience. We also, I give you the top 6, but there's about 12 that show up over and over and over again in the literature, and you name some of the others: honesty, integrity, reliability, hardworking. That's what we need. And we need it not just when things are going smoothly. I've heard, I don't know how many people in the last day and a half say that no 2 days are the same at the J. Which means that predictability ain't so much a thing. Predictability is how we measure what didn't happen. What routines and guidelines, that's how we measure how we handled what did happen. But what we know we will have are disruptors. Disruptors that can be wonderful. You can have a wonderful disruptor because the 4-year-old ballet class breaks out into dance in the hallway when the seniors are trying to get from silver sneakers to lunch. It can be a wonderful disruptor, like a beautiful sunny day when you weren't expecting it, and so everybody wants to eat outside on the patio of the cafe and you just don't have enough tables. It can also be weather delay. It can be a staffing challenge. It can be that a member of your community suddenly ill. It can be something worse, like a structural problem in your building, or the snowplow service just didn't pull it off overnight, and now you've got 3 fender benders in the parking lot while kids are trying to drop off their 3-year-olds who all, for whatever reason, decided today was the day to wear tutus and a Superman cape instead of a coat. So all kinds of real human disruptors happen. In the face of those, what we need most of that long list is resilience, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulty, to spring back. You know that really annoying thing about how the only way to build muscle is to exercise? Wouldn't it be awesome if there was another way? And that exercise builds muscle by breaking it down. And then it repairs even stronger. Such as it is with stress and resilience. Stress breaks down resilience and is necessary to build resilience. Does anybody remember from 4th grade science class what happens to astronauts' bones in space? Yeah, they break down, they get weaker. They actually start to reabsorb into the body. Because our bones, for the osteoblasts and the osteoclasts to do their job, they're constantly breaking down and rebuilding bone. And it is the stress of gravity and weight-bearing exercise. All the health and fitness people in the room are like, say exercise, and you're right. With exercise, these things happen with stress. So it turns out that although we have this cultural belief that stress is bad, there's good stress and bad stress. Stress just means pressure from an unexpected or a new direction. Pressure, that's really all stress is. It is strain. It could be physical, it could be emotional or psychological, but it's strain. And strain isn't terrible. Good stress makes you wake up early and go over your notes before that presentation. It makes you check that email one more time to make sure you have the start time correct for the thing that you said that you sent out for everybody. It makes you just check in one extra time with maintenance to make sure that you're gonna have the tables and the chairs in the room exactly how you need them. It makes you show up early to practice your presentation. Good stress keeps people performing. Bad stress, overwhelm, gives them a reason to stop working. You're wondering, how do I keep my staff in the rockin' it zone, right? Not everything's so easy breezy that they're like got their feet up on their desk when you come in and they're like, oh, hey, you wanna hear this amazing article I just saw on Facebook? That's not enough stress. But the stress where they start to freak out and decompensate and can't remember what they were gonna do, or remember that we have people to help with that, or remember that if you communicate, we can solve this better. That's the level of stress that's a problem. So what we're talking about today really is how do you move where people are on this graph? And how do you move the stress that they're experiencing and perceiving when you have control over it to kind of keep them in the middle? Because we talk about the fight or flight reaction, but really we have 4 possible reactions to tremendous stress. And one is fight, and more testosterone tends to make that more likely. Flight, where you're like, peace out, I cannot do this, I got nothing, and you just go. But there's also, and a lot of us will remember instinctively this experience, you just freeze. Many people describe this in dreams, that there's a huge unexpected fear or stressor in a dream, and in their dream they're frozen. That's what they call the do nothing response. But what we want from people is the resolution response. We want them to face it. I want to stop a second though. This slide describes facing it as dealing with the problem in a calm and rational way, with a planned or proactive approach. What it doesn't talk about is that's never what happens first, and that's okay. I speak every year in front of the United States Army War College. The War College, which is in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, offers basically a master's in leadership every year for the officers who are about to level up to command in all 5 branches of our active military. So people are gonna level up to command of an Army base or a carrier or a submarine. And they come with their spouse and kids and do a year in Carlisle learning about leadership. And they bring me in to talk about resilience. And I show this slide that's a picture of 3 19-year-old guys in urban battle fatigues in Fallujah with their clear face shields down and their weapons ready, and they are stone-faced. And they're looking out at a fairly unruly crowd. And next to it, I show a picture of a 6-year-old boy in a red windbreaker and a bicycle helmet on a bicycle, pedaling and sobbing. And I ask the group, I say, which is a better example of resilience? And the first time I ever did this, the highest ranking person in the room, and I'm like completely intimidated by rank, he raised his hand and I say, yes, sir. And he says, the kid on the bike. And I said, I agree, can you explain why? And he said, well, first of all, I've been where those young men are and they're scared out of their freaking minds, they probably wet themselves. And he said, but the kid on the bike, he's still pedaling. Resilience is not stoicism. And this is something that especially men are taught, that if they're going to handle something, they must be stoic. That showing emotion isn't resilient. That's wrong. Showing emotion and freezing there, not moving off of the emotion, sticking with the emotion, clinging to it, riding that ride over and over again, that's not resilience. But having an authentic emotional reaction to a stressor, that is necessary for resilience. Stoicism leads to negative coping mechanisms. It leads to a rise in violence. It leads to more substance abuse, all kinds of bad things. But it does not form connection. Without an authentic emotional response, which does not have to be dramatic or attention-getting, but without an authentic emotional response and honesty about your emotions, at least to yourself, you cannot form connection with other people. And in our agencies, as we know, connection is what drives. Okay, we've talked about what we need from our staff. Let's be honest and talk about what they need from you. This shows you some of these things, and you won't be surprised to see that a lot of them are the same. Honesty, communication, integrity. But they also want you to encourage their growth. They also want to see that you are a hard worker. Someone in the camp job track yesterday said that she most respected her coach in high school who ran the miles with the team, who did the same number of reps that she asked from the girls on the team. She did them and led at the same time. It doesn't mean that you have to collate the papers with the person who's collating the papers. Is collating even a thing anymore? It's like the most 1987 example I've ever given in my life. When you ask of your staff to work hard, though, they have to know, not just guess, not just, well, if they respect me, they must know I'm a hard worker. They should see your sweat, too. They should know that you also work hard. They're looking for leadership opportunities, but they're also looking for leadership. So let's talk about resilient strategies. What we're going to talk about this morning are three: preparation for bad things, the response to bad things, and reconciliation afterwards, recovering from bad things. Are you ready? The purpose of preparing is to maintain focus when bad things happen. You got to practice for bad things. A little bit later, I'm going to talk about using intentionally when, not if, language. When, I tell my students, a patient codes, which means their heart stops, in my office, what are you going to do? I say to a new student, I teach medical students every day I'm in the office, or residents, I say, when you walk into a room and you're worried, this patient looks sick, what are you going to do? And they want to freeze. They want to freeze just from me asking them the question. What I'm saying, I say, when you get a diagnosis wrong, what are you going to do? I don't say if, because if is like, well, if you fail, what should happen next? When something goes wrong, because we know that it will, what are you going to do next? Now I know that you recognize that I'm not perfect. You recognize that I might mess up. That helps me prepare, to think past that overwhelming event. And isn't that what we've just been saying we're trying to encourage people to do, to think past that overwhelming event? So we want them to be able to maintain their focus. We also want to improve our culture around disruptors. Right now, in most workplaces, when a disruptor happens, pretty much everybody goes, "Tch. I don't want that to happen." Can you imagine if in a preschool class, every single time a kid didn't listen, the teacher went, "Tch." And the director would be like, "They're 3, what did you think would happen?" So I want to tell you, they're Jews, what did you think would happen? Stuff goes wrong. And that's true of every agency. I could make that joke in front of any group of people. We're people. We don't always do what we expect. We have disruptors. But the best reason for you to prepare is to prevent burnout. Because enough of those, and you start looking for another job. And I want to prevent your burnout. And I also want to prevent you from losing good people right after an emergency. Because during it, they stick, but they think to themselves, after this, I'm out. And if you've prepared for it, if you've said, these things will happen, any week we can get through without a major disruptor is a huge win. Pizza in my office. That's fantastic. That's a better mindset. How do we get people to do hard things? Mission. Mission is something that you have the advantage of that GetGo or Kogos or Wawa, or I'm trying to pick out different regions in the country, or A&P, that the person who works down the street at the gas station, they don't have a mission. They may have a slightly higher paycheck, but they don't have mission. When you understand your mission, it allows you to explain not just the how of what you do or the why of what you're aiming for, but why you should be willing to do something hard. Why, when snow blankets the city and buses stop running and schools close, you should go out and shovel your walk and find a safe way in and get to work anyway, because your why is crucial to your community. Because your community can't do without you. They depend on you, and your mission really matters. Your mission should help you explain your unpopular decisions, like opening on the snow day. Why is a question of engagement. And some people heard me talk about this yesterday, and I'm going to talk about it later in my Choose Your Own about leadership development. But I want you to remember that for everyone who's Generation X and older, we were taught that if your boss tells you to do something, you do it. And if you say why, it is disrespectful. Yes? And then the internet came along. And kids came to their parents and said, "Did you know that all dinosaurs had purple polka dots?" And you said, "Why do you think that? What's your source?" How would they know? I know we have dinosaur bones, but I don't think we have any dinosaur skin to look at, sweetie. So maybe that's really fun in the YouTube video you watch, but are you sure it's true? Why do you believe it? Why would you do that? Why would you act on that? And then those people grew up, and they became employees, and we said, "Hey, I need all the tables that are at that end of the building to go to that end of the building," and they say, "Why?" And it is a question that they use to engage in the work. It is not meant to be a show of disrespect, but it is a big generational divide that we have in our work. They're looking for mission. They're looking for purpose. And they're looking to see if they can come up with a better, faster way to do what you need to get done. But isn't that also one of the things you said you wanted? Initiative. I also am going to talk a little bit about praise and feedback, and you're going to have to think about the why there too. But I want you to think to yourself and not show me hands. How many of you, how sure are you that your staff know your mission? And I'd encourage you, if you're not totally sure, to audit that question when you go back. To figure out, if you don't know your mission, I'd like you to start there. But I want your staff to know why they should create an amazing new program, but also why they should go buy the stronger carpet cleaner to get the vomit out of the rug in the fours room, or buy the jogging track because somebody worked out a little too hard. You're thinking, I hope, about the intersection of your mission and your members and your staff, because that's where hard work gets done with pride and not resentment. In organizations where people say that their work is mission-driven, they have 30% higher levels of innovation, 40% higher levels of retention, and tend to be first or second in their market segment in whatever their industry is. Mission matters. Okay, more preparation. I want you, I really want this to work. There we go. I want you to learn more about your staff. Because for me to work really hard for you, even for the coolest mission, I need to feel known by you. I need to feel seen by you. You learn about your staff in order to build their resilience. Yes, you need to know about their strengths and also their obstacles or their challenges to be able to do the work. But you probably had to know about that for their evaluation. I want you to also know their life story. I want you to know that they were really stressed about their sister's baby shower last weekend and pulling it off to her specifications, because she can be really a pain. But actually it went really well, and she said something really touching afterwards. I want you to follow them on social media, if you can, to see some of the things that are important to them. I want you to, when you say, "Hey, how you doing?" to listen to the answer. I want you to know their goals, because it is their goals having some connection to your mission that will keep them working for you, even when the department store in town is advertising for a manager with the same skill set and slightly higher pay. Only if your mission is not only compelling, but matches one or more of their goals. We have to build trust to get resilience. We can't ask, for example, we know that kids who live with tons of chaos and can't trust that their grown-ups have their back, they have a much harder time building resilience. Even though they often look like they've got it all together, they can take care of their sick family member, and they can show up to school with the forged permission slip because nobody at home is reliable enough to sign something, so they just take care of business. They're more in the stoic realm, and they're at much higher risk for risky behaviors and for damaging substance abuse and all kinds of other negative coping mechanisms. Trust is crucial to be able to actually authentically build resilience. Some of the ways that you build trust with your staff is through listening and knowing them, but some of it is about working towards a manageable workload. You may not be able to get everybody to a manageable workload. Some of it is about owning it, saying we're going to staff this up, or we can't right now. And here's my long-term plan, hoping to, but we can't do it yet. So I need you to understand that I see your struggle. I can trust somebody who says, I'm asking too much of you, and I see it, and here's my plan to try and stop doing it, and how can I help you in the meantime? They also need to know a clear support chain when they're struggling with something that is impacting their resilience, meaning when they're experiencing stress. Who should they tell? And who would you rather they didn't tell? For example, the membership that they happen to be chatting with in the cafe. You have to demonstrate gratitude. And you don't have to demonstrate gratitude. Aaron Weil made an amazing point in his Choose Your Own yesterday about managing millennials. What do people think the golden rule is? Treat others as you want to be treated? Treat others as they want to be treated. Treat others as they want to be treated. Show gratitude for what they think they did that was hard. I'm not asking you to throw a ticker tape parade every time someone actually clocks in on time. But I can tell you that just 2 mornings ago, I sent a text to my 12-year-old on his stupid little flip phone, because I'm too mean and he's not allowed to have a smartphone, while he was standing at the bus stop, that just said, I saw how much your little brother annoyed you this morning. Thank you for not hitting him. Because that was hard work that he did from his point of view. I won't throw a ticker tape parade every time he doesn't clobber his brother, except in here quietly. But demonstrating authentic gratitude when somebody overcame something that was hard for them is meeting them where they are. We're talking about when culture and mission and vision align, that's where you get something that your folks can work hard for, can be really uncomfortable because it's worth it. What's an example of organizations that really show in their initiatives and in their programming and in their attitude, their culture, their mission? You guys. Every single thing I see as not a JCC employee from the outside looks like the mission of the Jewish Community Centers. And this is something you're already really good at when you turn to face your membership. I want you to make sure you're also excellent at it when you turn to face your staff, when you think about your team, when you praise them. I want you to think about the recognition that you give, both formally and informally. Is it mission-driven? It's great to say, we're aiming for this really lofty thing, but do you celebrate when you take a bite out of it? In the smallest ways. I don't know what you did, but that carpet does look like no one threw up on it. Thank you. And I maybe don't want to know what you did. That can be your mystery. Do you allow, do you encourage, do you make it intentional that people recognize each other? Do you give your staff an opportunity to recognize up and tell them how great it feels for a supervisor to get praise or feedback or positive recognition from someone that they're supervising? Does it just swirl around in your agency, people looking for chances to catch each other fulfilling the mission? What could possibly be bad about that? And I want you to use peer pressure for good. Near peer mentoring and peer mentoring is some of the most powerful professional development we have. And I am, spoiler alert, going to talk about this more in my leadership development, Choose Your Own, but colleague encouragement drives people to fulfill a mission. You could look at your colleague when the person who's running the meeting says, listen, you guys, I know it's really a pain, but for this thing that we're doing tomorrow night, I really need 3 people to come in even earlier and stay even later, barefoot in the snow, uphill both ways. And you could look at your colleague and be like, oh, they're always asking too much of us. And if that person rolls their eyes back, then that's where they live, right? And resentment gets in the way of resilience. But if that person goes, oh, and the other person goes, oh, it's going to be such a great program, and I think it could really change people. Now I can not only feel a little quietly chastised for kind of being a whiny little biatch about it, but also feel really good about being like, I know I'm one of those people that has to come in really early uphill both ways, and I'm getting to help change people's lives. When you use that when language, it shouldn't only be about bad things. It should also be about changing people's lives. When we accomplish our mission, you give people what's called a future feeling. When we accomplish our mission, then you know when you're walking through the grocery store and you see one of our member families, they're going to be feeling fantastic about seeing somebody from the J. Their kiddo is going to treat you like a hero, because first of all, they think you live at the J, and they don't understand that you exist in a different building in their town. Set expectations. Remove the premise of failure as a disappointment. Say, failures we're going to have, but at the JCC, we handle them. That's our culture. And we have to have a conversation about how uncomfortable is not the same thing as unsafe. We have to cultivate a conversation around the need for discomfort. We are living in a society that regularly conflates, that regularly equates uncomfortable with unsafe. We are working with a young generation of staff who have been told, if it feels uncomfortable, stop, don't do it. The problem with that is we never grow or learn if we're not uncomfortable. So if we need discomfort for learning and for growth and for change, we need employees to not only handle discomfort, but expect it, see the value in it, and hear from us that we value that they're handling it, that we're really grateful. Let them see your discomfort and how you manage it. One of the ways you can engage in this conversation really transparently is to ask in a staff meeting for your folks to really just define uncomfortable. And then ask for them to define unsafe. And there will be some similarities, but point out the differentiators. And I'll give you a tip. The biggest differentiator is that something that is unsafe could be permanently damaging. And something that is uncomfortable is at worst temporarily damaging, but usually just uncomfortable. You have to model this difference for them and talk about how hard it is to be uncomfortable and how valuable it can be. So let's talk about response. Bad things happen. If it was possible to make bad things never happen, I would totally go around talking about how to do that. But it's not. So we know bad things are going to happen. The problem is we don't know how to plan for it. Yeah, we do. Look at your mission. Your emergency protocols should not only be about who goes where and who gets called when and chain of command. They should be, and I'm going to talk about this in some of my J-Response job track sessions, they should be about communication, they should be about emotion, they should be about attitude. I hear a lot when I work in the corporate world and also with the military and also with universities about this idea of entitlement. People are like, well, you can't ask me to do that thing that I know is my responsibility because don't you know that I had an argument with my partner last night and my phone dropped in the toilet? Like, you have to understand how I feel, and then you would not ask these things of me. My feelings are definitely bigger and more important than my obligations. No, 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 no. Sweetie, what you do is way more important than how you feel. As a matter of fact, if you don't do what you need to do, nobody actually really cares about how you feel. If you mostly do what you're supposed to do, I totally care when you're having a bad day. But if you never do what you're supposed to do, really, if like your eyebrow hair grew wrong, I just do not care. Even your mom doesn't really care. She's just better at pretending than I am. So we have to teach our team in their own development that their feelings matter and that their behavior matters just a little bit more. That what you do does matter a touch more than what you feel. And because we are a nonprofit and because we are Jewish community centers, we have space for both. If you can keep meeting the expectations about what you do, we have all the space in the world to know how you're feeling and to have empathy and to care and to be a hug or a listening ear or a shoulder. But we need protocols that help our staff see that acknowledge that disruptors are freaking annoying to terrifying. They're somewhere on that scale. And so we have to talk about that in our emergency preparedness. And this is something that I am rock solid on as a physician who has run probably 300 codes in my life. Emergencies are not the time to question or change protocols. Are we really sure this is the best medicine to bring blood pressure down from malignant levels? Have you read the most recent journal article about this? This is when nurses push you out of the way and push the drug into the IV themselves and then write you up. And they're right, because there's time for committees, although ick. There's time for conversation. There's time for insight and evaluation. In the moment is not that time. That is the only time that you need your staff to hold their why question and just do it. How do you get that message across and still sound respectful and authentic to everything else I've been talking about? Transparency. Transparency is required for resilience. Saying, this is not the time because right now we have to make sure that none of the little kids out in that parking lot with 3 fender benders die. So there's probably a million ways that this could have gone better and that I personally, as your supervisor, could have handled that better, and I'm gonna need to hear about that. This is not that moment. Be transparent about the expectations you set, about policies you change, about drama that's going on. Somebody asked a really good question yesterday in a session I was in about what about when you can't be totally transparent? Some things need to be private. Some things are privileged information between, say, the CEO and the COO are having a conversation, and not everything that they talk about is for everybody else to hear. Or, you know, confidential information about someone of your membership, and a couple of people need it, but most people don't. You can be transparent about your discretion. I can tell you this. I know you can tell from the look on my face that there's some stuff I'm not saying, and I just wanted to be respectful and acknowledge that and say, I have some information about this that I'm not privileged to share because part of our mission is the financial stability of our agency, and fits into that bigger picture in a bunch of ways. But I wanted you to know that I know you're an adult, and you know that there are things we can talk about and a couple of things we can't. I think I'm giving you all the information that we need for this conversation. And if you don't feel that way, I'm sorry, and I'd like to hear about that. Be transparent about your why, even when you're doing something somebody doesn't like, when you're not handling it the way that they wanted to. That's how you build respect. When your staff is suffering, an individual or as a group, with a frustration or a difficulty or an overwhelm, you can do something that I teach thousands of parents to do every month. You can have empathy for that person without fixing it. You can say, I hear that that's frustrating. You can lead with support and understanding instead of blame or making them afraid for their job, but you don't have to change the rule to prove that you're trustworthy. You just have to have empathy and transparency about what you can talk about and what you can't, and connect it to your mission. Okay, reconciliation. What's next? We have to come back after something difficult to a state of normal. I know, there's no such thing. But that state of normal means we have to debrief what happened and use it. Remember I said, stress is like exercise. As exercise is to muscle, so is stress to resilience. It breaks it down and it builds it up. This is the part where you build it up. Reconciliation is really important. How do you do it? First, you ask. So, you just had a disruptor. You're sitting down with the people who are involved and say, what happened? From your point of view. You remember the elephant and the different blind people in the room touching the elephant, describing what was in the room with them? You want to know about this staff person's piece of the elephant. What happened for them? How was it for you? Why? And listen to their answer. Okay, now that you've done that, it's your turn to talk? No, not yet. Next, empathy. Oh, babies. Okay. Let everybody's gonads have a little spasm and then calm back down. Okay. You want to express empathy in reconciliation. You can't reconcile, come back together without empathy. I hope that your staff can have empathy for you in these conversations as well, but you need to model it. You don't have to agree with the feelings that they have about what happened or how they handled it to have empathy for how it landed with them. Every disruptor brings us back to other disruptors in our own personal timeline. So whatever that brings up for that person, they don't need to excuse it or explain it. They don't even have to tell you the story if you can get away with not hearing it. But you need to have empathy that they felt how they felt. Please don't argue with people or tell them how to feel. It's not useful, and it's disrespectful. You don't have to agree with how they feel. You don't have to agree with what they did, but you have to say, I hear how you're feeling, and that's hard. I'm sorry you're struggling. Then, a plan. You are offering support, but you don't have to have the solutions. As a matter of fact, the whole thing will go better if you require, gently, supportively, them to tell you how it should go better next time. For the whole group, not just from their point of view. Well, I shouldn't have to clean up that vomit. What would be a better plan? And not only do I want you to require them to come up with some ideas to solve the problems that they see so clearly that you don't, I want follow-through. I want you to create an idea board, however you do it. It might be an email chain, it might be a check-in, but real follow-up and accountability about what the idea is for change, who owns that idea, what progress they hope to make on it, what the obstacles might be, and then metrics for seeing if they can possibly implement it. Now, if they come up with a wacky idea, they're like, well, really all we ought to do is take the entire wall off that side of the JCC and put in bleacher seating and just let everybody watch what we do in here, you might be like, right, that doesn't fit our mission. But if their idea is something that is possible and fits your mission, see if you can challenge yourself to say, okay, let's see. Let's explore that. Get into it. That builds their resilience. Identifying problems is not enough to build resilience. Working through to solve problems, that's what we need. Here's what it comes down to. Resilience is about living your mission. In every difficult situation, and we'll face them every day. Your JCCs are facing them today while you're not even there. Every single time. If why I'm putting up with this, if why I'm doing the hard work isn't something that feeds my discontent, but it feeds my sense of purpose, it does not make the work any easier. It makes it more valuable. And there is actually nothing more valuable for the future of the Jewish people in North America than the work that you are doing. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And I just want to mention that there are some people back at your J that you're thinking about who should be sitting here. And I hope that you will remember when you go home to tell them one thing that you learned in this conference and say, I thought about you when I heard that, and I hope you'll come with me next year to ProCon. Bye, everybody.